welcome everyone. If you could just give me a quick hello, so I know that it is working, that would be great. All right, awesome. Let's go ahead and get started. So I want to cover privilege escalation. So this is pretty much the last step. Once you've already gained access to the system, you'll need to be able to gain higher access to be the king of the hill. You can't just be on the hill, you have to be the king of the hill. That's the goal. So I'm going to cover a tool. It's going to be the same tool whether you're beginner or intermediate, called LinPEAS. It's a very cute little logo they got there. They have LinPEAS for Linux, WinPEAS for Windows, and MacPEAS for Mac. Um, this is a very powerful tool. It allows you um, to detect vulnerabilities. It's an automated script that goes through and checks possible vulnerabilities all across Linux systems, or all across a Linux system once you have access to it. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my terminal, and we can look at how we use this. So let me go ahead. If you just type in LinPEAS on Google, you can get this little GitHub link here. You get the cute little Linux P. You can use this quick start to download LinPEAS and execute it. I've already checked over the script. I don't usually recommend downloading and executing scripts, but go ahead and download and execute it after you've read over it. I recommend, but it's a fairly straightforward script. Checks a lot of stuff. So go ahead. You can execute this command on whatever you're trying to detect vulnerabilities on. And this is a very general script. So this is not something that I'm going to be able to explain every single example of things that are running, things that are possible vulnerabilities, but I can show you some interesting things you might see. So this top right here, well, other than the cute P at the top, we're looking for something like this red, yellow, 95% privilege escalation vector, and these reds. So we're looking for red, yellow, and reds. Now, if sometimes your terminal doesn't support that, you will have to, it'll usually be a different color. It'll be in a lower color mode. You'll just have to look at, it might be a slightly different color here, so you'd have to look at that color, then compare the colors to see which ones they are. So let's go ahead and go down here. Pseudo version. So you can look this up. It's an interesting CVE. It's not, pretty much every pseudo version is vulnerable to this, but it's not, it doesn't actually give you privilege escalation because it requires other stuff to be going on. Possible path abuses. So this is actually really interesting thing here. If I was executing this as root, if I was executing some program inside of my home Christian as root, I could just go in here and modify what that program is and give me root access. But I know that there's nothing being executed in here as root, so we can go ahead and continue on. Let me confirm something. Oops, I did not mean to stop that. Let's continue that. But we can go ahead and start reading through some of these other ones. I doubt anything else is going to be showing up. It's a pretty clean system. I don't think there's really anything on it. As you can see, there's a ton of stuff here. So you just got to scroll through and look for some reds. So it's saying that, oh, it found some private SSH keys, but it's only for my user. So it's not going to be anything in here. Let's not show private keys on stream. So let me switch over really quickly. I forgot that it does show that. Let's skip over that. Go back. Awesome. Some possible VNC passwords, but as we checked earlier with our VNC, when we checked earlier with Nmap, we saw that this was the system that I checked. VNC was actually not running. So I'm sure that there are going to be some, maybe some RDP stuff in here. So we may want to be careful with that. But yeah, so generally you would want to run through here and look at all the possible vulnerabilities that are showing up here. And these could generally lead you to getting past some vulnerabilities. So I do want to show you some common vulnerabilities. Once I get past this, my SSH key. So I'm going to switch back. Awesome. Not too interested in this. So we are looking for something that is red and yellow, but we do not see any, because like I said, it's a fairly new system, so it really doesn't have anything running on it. So let's look at how some common vulnerabilities. So one common vulnerability that you might see is when you have some sort of set UID. So let me pull up a little window here and I can show you. So set UID is basically a way of I think this is the one that I saw before. This one's really good. Basically, this gives you the permission to execute it as the user who has the set UID bit. So as the owner. So if I set the oops, let's not look at that. So let's go ahead and create a file. I think we have the test.txt would probably be a good one here. But imagine that this was some file that needed to be executed. That's executed by root or by an administrator user. What if you were able to put inside that file just a reverse shell, as we were talking about earlier? I'll explain reverse shells tomorrow in the King of the Hill video. But if you're trying to get a reverse shell, then if all you need to do is have root execute that reverse shell. So we can set up a set UID on, a lot of times you'll have some sort of executable that um, you'll have some sort of executable that allows that needs to be executed as root, but it needs to be executed by a certain user. So let's go ahead and use sudo, and we're going to change the directory permissions on this. We're going to not do chmod, we're going to be chown. We're going to set root as the owner of test.txt. Forgot which password I used on this system. There we go. So now if I do ls-la, we can see that test.txt is owned by root. Let me actually set that to root. So the owner and the group is root, no such file in directory. Oh, it's root:root, I believe. There we go. So now we see root owns this. I can still read this because we see that everyone has read permission. So we want to go ahead and we need to test this as executable. So let's sudo vim some test.txt, or let's use nano because that's a little bit easier to work with. So sudo nano test.txt. We can go ahead and edit in here. I'll write just a simple executable that we can test with. This could be any program you want. There you go. And what I basically did here, so in order to execute a program, this third one is execute. It's read, write, and execute. In order to execute a program, you actually need to give it execute permissions. You can do that just with the chmod +x. But since this is sudo's, this requires sudo permissions, you do need to have, or because it's a root's file, you need sudo permissions. So you need to use sudo to get root permissions to edit this file. So let's go ahead and set up this set UID here. So we're looking to modify the ownership of the file. So we're looking at u+s just like it says here. So we will need to also set the execute for, so let's do chmod u+s test.txt. Let's look at this test.txt. Now if we execute this, you see we have, actually let me remove execute permissions on this. So let me fix the permissions here. So we don't want everyone to have execute permissions. We only want this user to have that execute permissions. So permissions denied. Let me go ahead and add the set UID again. All right. Let me, mission denied, I believe. Simple as setting ownership. I think this user actually needs to own that file. There we go. So what this is doing is it's executing this as root. So whenever you execute this, oops, I don't need to do it again. When we are looking at this, it removed the text. All right. So what this is doing is it's executing this as root. So I'm running it. I have the permissions. I am the owner of this file, but I am running this as root because I have set UID set here. So I have execute permissions as root. And this test dot, I guess, let's rename this test.text to test.exe to make things a little bit clearer. So, and it even shows it in red because it knows that it's not secure to be doing this. And if we run LinPEAS, our command, there we go. Let me go ahead, switch over to this really quickly. While that's loading, I do want to go ahead and show us the last slide here. You should definitely run this on your own system. I recommend running it on your own system to see what kind of vulnerabilities you see in your own system. It's pretty nice to look at, oh shoot, there's this vulnerability that I didn't even know about on my system that it could allow somebody to gain root access. So something that you can try is actually running this on your own system to see what kind of things are returned. If you see anything interesting, feel free to post it and we can talk about it. So this should be popping up. All right, let me switch back over. So as we see right here, set UID, you own this set UID file, this test.exe file. So that means that we can execute that as root. And since we own it, we can modify it. We can change it to execute whatever we want to as root, including getting us a shell. There are several other things in here that are set UID, but none of these are all standard ones that you'll see on every single system because they require you to be set UID. For example, in order to become sudo, you need to run a program as sudo. But sudo does its own internal checking to make sure that you're not sudo, if that makes any sense. To make sure that you're not attacking the application, sudo has its own security implemented inside of the program, so that you can't exploit it. But anything that would be in like your home directory or a special directory that only you have access to would be something worth looking into, and it's a pretty common vulnerability. So let me switch back over. Like I said, I recommend running this on your own system to see what kind of cool stuff you see. That is the end of my presentation here. That is the end of the presentations for the day. What time are we at? 22. If anybody has any questions, they can feel free to put them in the YouTube chat. Otherwise, I'm going to be switching over to Discord, and we can look at, and I'll be looking at some John the Ripper stuff, and I'll post about it and everything. So feel free to hop over if you have any questions, if you have any issues. Um, just stop by. You'll see me in the discussion room, I believe. So I'm going to go ahead and end the stream in about a minute. All right. Do I have any questions? No. All right. I'll see you on the Discord if you have any questions. Otherwise, have a great evening, and I'll see you tomorrow.